Yeah, it's not what you think. It was horrible. But I didn't like any of his shows, and I didn't like the script, and I got in, and I had this legal issue.
What secret could Tom Selleck possibly hold for 40 years about James Garner, the man he once called his greatest influence? At 80, Selleck is finally breaking his silence, pulling back the curtain on a truth that shaped not just his career, but his life as a husband, father, and Hollywood icon. This isn't the story you think you know. It's deeper, more personal, and unforgettable. Aren't you curious to hear it all? Stick with me. The athlete who never planned on acting. Tom Selleck's story begins in Detroit, Michigan, where he was born into a working-class family in 1945. His parents worked hard, and like many families of the post-war years, they wanted stability and a better future. When Selleck was still young, the family moved to Sherman Oaks, California, a place that would eventually shape his path. Growing up in the booming suburbs of Southern California, he was more focused on sports than anything else. He had no desire to be an actor, and the thought of Hollywood seemed like a faraway place. His first love was basketball, and because he was big and naturally good at it, he did very well very quickly. A scholarship to the University of Southern California let him play for the Trojans, and his hard work on the court won him that honor. He planned to have a job that didn't involve lights or cameras while he was at USC studying business administration. He saw basketball as both a discipline and a way to get ahead. At this point, acting wasn't even an idea. It wasn't even on his mind. Things changed in small, strange ways. At USC, a drama coach saw him and told him he should take acting lessons. Selleck wasn't too interested at first, but when he started acting in commercials, like the famous Pepsi ads from the 1960s, he began to see what could be possible. On film, he stood out because of his height, charm, and rough appearance. These first steps pointed him toward a career path he had not planned, pushing him into a field he had never imagined he would work in. But the path to becoming an actor wasn't easy or quick. Selleck kept getting turned down for roles, and he went years without having an interview. Audiences often didn't care about him because they thought he was just another tall, good-looking man with no meaning. It was hard for him to show people that he was more than just a face or a body. I was very angry during those years because it seemed like every chance was lost before it could become something bigger. During those early years of uncertainty, Selleck often turned to the TV stars he had grown up with. Maverick, with James Garner, was a show that made an impact. Unlike the stiff cowboys that were popular on TV at the time, Garner's character had a natural, easy charm to it. He seemed real, approachable, and believable in a way that other artists weren't. For Selleck, who wasn't sure of his own skills a lot of the time, watching Garner was like seeing proof that just being yourself was enough. Garner was admired for a long time before the two of them met. Selleck saw that Garner didn't need to act too much or act like she was famous. Instead, he played funny, honest, and caring people, which made him stand out. Selleck studied this style in secret, hoping that one day he could be as honest in his own work. Garner was like an unseen guide for him as he thought about his place in Hollywood. In the 1960s and 1970s, Selleck worked hard at everything he did, and even small parts were important. His outings on shows like The Dating Game made him feel bad because he wasn't picked more than once. He kept going, though, and learned something from every event, even the ones that hurt. If someone wanted to get into Hollywood, they had to keep trying. In many ways, these problems made him tougher, which he would need later. But there was growth along with the mistakes. Being in commercials helped him learn timing, and guest parts taught him how to act on TV. Every loss made him work harder at what he did, even though it took a long time. He learned how to walk, hold a scene, and change when he was in front of the camera. Even though these lessons were hard, they would eventually get him ready for the moment when everything came together. Every leading man hides shadows. Tom's struggles reveal how fragile dreams can be when life's weight crashes behind the spotlight. The breaks that slipped away. Tom Selleck's path to fame was never smooth. In the beginning of his career, he jumped at chances that looked good, but didn't work out. People don't remember where he had one of his first public setbacks: the dating game. Selleck showed up more than once, but he wasn't picked. He later said that this hurt more than he thought. What was supposed to be a fun time in the sun became a quiet reminder of how hard it would be to become famous. After that, he had a few small TV parts, most of the time as a guest star who only stayed for one episode. He was in Gunsmoke and worked on projects that were never shown on TV. The movie business kept him around, but he was never really in the middle of things. People only vaguely recognized his face, not the name on the signs. During this limbo period, many people thought Selleck would never be recognized or remembered. The part of Indiana Jones was one of the saddest ones to lose. Both George Lucas and Steven Spielberg wanted him for the part because they thought his rough charm was great for it. But the time was not on his side. He was already stuck on Magnum, PY, and the makers of the show wouldn't let him go. For Raiders of the Lost Ark, he didn't get to crack the whip. Instead, he had to watch Harrison Ford steal the show. There were other times that were just as painful. He tried out for the TV show Planet of the Apes, but the makers chose someone else. He almost got a job on The Young and the Restless, which would have kept him busy all the time, but it fell through before it started. Each close call painted a picture of an actor who was always on the verge of success, but never quite got there. Some people in the business quietly called him a nearly man. He would be known by that name for years to come. Selleck was getting more and more angry because he didn't just want to be noticed. He wanted to show that he could carry something big. But Hollywood seemed to think he was only good for small roles. That was because he didn't have enough experience yet to fight back against that idea. Because of this, he was always thought about but rarely picked. Anyone in their 20s could have quit after seeing this. There was a twist in fate, though, and it came in the form of James Garner. The two of them met when Selleck was a guest star on The Rockford Files. At first, Selleck was just another star who showed up in Garner's life. But that event was a turning point. Later, Selleck said that being on set with Garner was one of the scariest things that had ever happened to him. The younger star might have felt small around Garner, but he didn't. He instead joked around and was friendly to ease the stress. Selleck was nervous because he thought he would be overwhelmed, but he surprised everyone by coming out with confidence. People seemed to feel calmer when they were around Garner. For Selleck, it was the first time he felt like he fit in Hollywood. That guest spot wasn't just a job, it was a taste of the mentoring that was to come. Most Hollywood stars tried to stay out of the spotlight, but Garner wasn't like that. He knew what it was like to be in the grind because he had been there himself before Maverick broke through. Seeing Selleck made him think of when he was younger. They felt a quiet bond with each other because they recognized each other. The day Selleck met his hero. When Tom Selleck met James Garner for the first time, he thought he would be a distant Hollywood star who didn't like meeting new people. In its place, he found a man who didn't have an ego and was kind to everyone. Selleck was surprised by that moment because he had learned in Hollywood that actors should always protect their power and standing. Garner's humility wasn't something he did. It was a real part of who he was. That meeting changed Selleck's ideas about what a main man should look like in front of the camera. After decades of fame, Garner didn't act like a man who was big-named. He walked onto a set and was just as polite to the workers as he was to the producers. Selleck learned a lot about real people through this, which is something that acting schools can't teach. Small things like saying thank you, shaking hands, and making eye contact were what Selleck saw as the building blocks of long-lasting respect in Hollywood. He would always remember that first impression. Selleck started to notice the small but sharp teaching moments as he worked with Garner. Garner never gave lectures or showed off his skills. Instead, he showed others how to do it by the way he behaved. He thought that the guy carrying cables on set should get as much credit as the director. He thought the people who worked long hours, often without being seen, were the most important part of any show. Selleck picked up on that idea early on, and it later became a symbol of his career. Garner also taught him that fame shouldn't change how you treat other people. A lot of people let fame change how they act, but Garner saw that as the start of their fall. He thought it was important to stay grounded, even when there were cameras around him. Selleck understood that being humble wasn't a sign of weakness, but a strength that helped people stay calm in a crazy business. This turned out to be one of the most useful things he had ever had. For Selleck, Garner's way of playing was another big surprise. He didn't believe in adding more techniques or acting like someone they weren't. Garner taught that being real is always better than acting. Timing, improvising, and believing your gut made performances shine more than tricks that were practiced. With those lessons, Selleck started to improve his acting, and he learned that people connect with actors who are honest on screen. Selleck once said that Garner didn't need to act like anything. He didn't want to make a picture that looked perfect, but was actually fake. He brought parts of himself to every role he played, which made them convincing. This was very different from actors who depended on showmanship instead of substance. As Selleck built his own business, that difference helped him stay on track. Garner also talked about the risks of Hollywood behind closed doors, which most stars didn't listen to. He warned Selleck about contracts that made stars sign deals that were unfair but looked good. There were lots of ways to lose money, from bad managers to workers who said they would do more than they did. Garner had made those mistakes himself, and instead of keeping them to himself, he told Selleck about them. For a rising star, these were not only business tips, but also lessons in how to stay alive. Selleck also learned how important it is to keep his time and energy safe. She told him that many artists who took on too many roles got burned out faster than they became famous. He said it was just as important to turn down tasks as it was to take on the right ones. It was hard to learn how to say no in a business that was based on looks. That smarts kept Selleck from going down the same path as many of his friends who rose quickly and then fell even faster. Every role earned him applause, yet the price of Hollywood's game cost Selleck pieces of himself he could never reclaim. Becoming a star without losing himself. Tom Selleck became the face of a new type of TV hero when Magnum P.I. first came out in 1980. The beard, Ferrari, and Hawaiian shirts weren't just props. They were what it meant to be a man in the 1980s. Selleck went from being a failing actor to a well-known name almost overnight. But fame came with a lot of pressure, like being watched all the time by cameras and having your privacy invaded all the time. He thought about a lesson he had learned from James Garner at a time when fame could have been too much for him. The plan for filming Magnum P.I. was very hard, with long days in the hot Hawaiian sun and not much time to rest. There were paparazzi following him everywhere, and fans made sure he never had a moment of peace in public. At this level, a lot of artists got caught up in the circus of fame and took every chance they could. They also gave in to what the studios wanted. But Selleck kept his feet on the ground because Garner told him that acting was a job, not a way of life. That space between them helped Selleck keep his life steady while the world went on around him. Garner had always been open about how much he valued his personal life over the pleasures of Hollywood. During the 1960s, he publicly quit studio fights to choose peace over money. That's exactly what Selleck did when he refused to let fame control his every move. Networks kept telling him to keep making money off of how famous Magnum was. But he was planning for balance in the background. He didn't want to be another actor who was only known for one part. When Magnum finished, Selleck shocked everyone in the business by taking it easy instead of rushing to get the next big paycheck. He bought a ranch in Ventura County so he could spend more time with his daughter and less time in the press. Movie stars said this was a risky move, but Selleck felt it was the only thing that would feel right. It was clear what Garner meant. Work hard, but don't let it make you unhappy. Selleck escaped the burnout that killed so many other stars by going that route. The choice he made with Quigley Down Under was one of the most important in his career. Selleck didn't accept the detective part that studios wanted him to play over and over again. Instead, he chose a Western with a story that was important to him. He wasn't just interested in the money or riding on his TV fame. He picked a part that fit with his values. This was similar to Garner's own success, where Westerns were more than just fun. They were also ways to show who you are and how independent you are. Selleck's choice was both personal and professional. It was a way for him to take charge of his work. Fame tried to put Selleck in a certain mold all the time, but he fought those attempts with quiet determination. Studios thought he would make a great main man and wanted to use that picture over and over again. To make room for himself, he turned down offers when they didn't feel right. Years before, Garner had done the same thing, showing that sometimes leaving could be stronger than saying yes. That focus lets Selleck be in charge of his story, which is something actors don't get to do very often in the business. The thing that makes Selleck's story unique is how clearly he used Garner's plan without ever trying to copy him. He didn't take on Garner's parts or style, but he did adopt his way of living. Selleck fully lived out Garner's view that acting was never worth losing who you are. He was very famous, but when he wasn't acting, his image stayed clean and safe. His stability made him a star not only in the 1980s, but also for many years afterward. Behind the cameras, Selleck used Magnum PI more as a place to work than to show off his ego. He didn't see his team as tools for his success, but as people who helped him. This was also how Garner thought. People who worked with him respected him, which made them loyal and healthy places to work. Because he worked hard, Selleck's career lasted a long time after the careers of many other TV stars ended. Being humble and balanced kept him in the room, even though his fame opened doors for him. Choosing love over spotlight. Tom Selleck has always made decisions in his personal life that go against what Hollywood usually does. In 1971, he married Jacqueline Ray for the first time, and they had a son together. They formally adopted Kevin Shepard and raised him as their own. Early on, the choice showed that Selleck values loyalty over fame, giving Kevin a stable home instead of one that was broken up. The marriage ended in 1982, but the adoption lasted for a long time and made Selleck known as a guy who kept his word. He put his family ahead of becoming known as a short-lived Hollywood playboy. His second marriage to Gilly Mack was an even more loving story. When they met in the mid-1980s, she was in the London stage musical Cats, and Selleck was blown away by both her beauty and her down-to-earth nature. They got married in 1987 without any cameras or news stories around. After decades together, they are still together, which doesn't happen very often in Hollywood, where most famous relationships end after a few years. The fact that they are together shows that Selleck picked long-term relationships and privacy over fame and scandal. Their daughter, Hannah Margaret Selleck, was born in 1988, and she and Tom raised her together. They chose to keep her away from the chaos of Hollywood instead of pulling her into it. Hannah grew up on her family's ranch in California, and she fell in love with horses there. She is now a skilled horse rider who competes on a global level. People admire her skill more than her last name. By letting his daughter go this route, Selleck gave her the freedom that most famous kids never get. The Selleck family has lived on a 65-acre avocado ranch that used to belong to Dean Martin for a long time. Selleck bought the house in the late 1980s when he was at the top of his career. He wanted to get away from the constant stress of Hollywood, though. He talked about the ranch a lot, as if it were more than just land. After being in front of cameras for long periods of time, working the land, taking care of crops, and living close to nature calmed him down. More than just a way to escape, it turned into a way of life that taught me how to live with balance and perspective. Living on the ranch meant hard work, not comfort. Selleck worked on the land with paid help, trimming trees and bushes, fixing fences, and keeping an eye on the avocado harvest. It wasn't about being a cowboy. It was about being real in a world that lives on fake things. The hard physical work on the ranch kept Selleck strong and humble. It helped him see things in a different light when fame got too much for him, and reminded him that success should never take the place of personal duty. The ranch life taught them a lot and gave them a safe place to stay. James Garner, Selleck's friend and role model, set a quiet example that had a big impact on him. Garner was married to Lois Clark for almost 60 years, giving up the pleasures that came with being famous. There were a lot of affairs in the movie business, but Garner stood out as being steady, loyal, and private. Selleck admired Garner's unwavering dedication, as he saw how she built a marriage without giving up her work or honor. It was something Selleck did in his own relationship with Jilly. In Hollywood, a leading man was generally seen as someone who was indulgent, scandalous, and ended up in divorce. That assumption was broken by both Garner and Selleck. They showed that being a man wasn't about giving in to every urge, but about being strong, loyal, and disciplined. In a business that thrives on excess, their lives showed that being stable wasn't a sign of weakness, but of a greater kind of bravery. By turning down the wild lifestyle, both stars showed another side of fame that valued respect over indulgence. Selleck has said that his life might have been different if he hadn't had people like Garner to guide him. Hollywood was always throwing him off balance, and his fame gave him a lot of chances to get distracted. Selleck saw Garner stand up for family and privacy, which made him want to do the same. He learned to keep his wife, his kids, and his peace of mind safe instead of going after news stories. That idea affected not only the things he did, but also how he wanted to be known as a man. Garner wasn't just a mentor, he was Tom's compass, shaping choices, character, and the very foundation of Selleck's enduring legacy. The truth Selleck finally reveals. At age 80, Tom Selleck doesn't try to hide how much James Garner affected his life. Fans used to only connect the two men based on how well they got along on screen and how charming they were. But Selleck says it's more than that. Not only did he look up to Garner, but he was also the person he used to grade himself. In his own words, Garner set a goal that is so high that he says he is still trying to reach it. Being honest like that is a rare moment of thought in a career that has been all about being humble. Selleck says Garner's most important lesson had nothing to do with money or fame. It was about being real, about being the same person in real life as you are on TV. Garner never put on a mask, and people liked and respected him for that. Selleck says that this experience helped him deal with Hollywood and stay away from the pitfalls of ego and fake success. He stayed true to himself, even when fame might have pulled him in different ways, by taking Garner's grounded approach as a model. The two guys are very different from each other. Hollywood awards and news stories didn't pay much attention to Garner, but Selleck became famous through Magnum P.Y. and then Blue Bloods. Selleck, on the other hand, says that Garner's impact is what made him famous in the first place. One man made his name in a quiet way, while the other was in the spotlight. But they both believed in the same things. Selleck thinks that his work shows that Garner's way of life lives on even though he has died. The powerful thing about this thought is how personal it gets. Selleck doesn't just talk about Garner as a business guide. He thinks of him as someone who taught him how to live a balanced life. There were lessons that Selleck learned about family and job choices that he didn't learn in acting school or on film sets. What helped them the most were Garner's devotion to his family, his determination not to let fame change his values, and his appreciation for the craft. For Selleck, this was the plan for his own legacy. One thing Selleck talks about is how much Garner affected how he dealt with long-term success. A lot of artists keep trying to get roles because they're afraid that one mistake could ruin their careers. Selleck went the other way, just like Garner. He valued fewer but more important projects and put his energy into work that counted instead of trying to get as much attention as possible. This choice not only made him live longer, but it also kept the drive that kept him going for decades. He says Garner taught him that quality always lasts longer than quantity. Selleck still says he doesn't think he's as good as Garner. At age 80, most men would just sit back and enjoy their heritage, but he still has the drive to be as real as Garner was. He does not see this as a loss, but as proof of how great Garner really was. At an age when most people give up, it takes humility to say you're still learning. For Selleck, being humble is a way to remember the man who shaped him. Garner also had an effect on how Selleck treated other people in Hollywood. People knew him as a nice guy on set, who was patient with younger artists and didn't get involved in messy politics. These traits match Garner's image as one of the nicest men in the business. Selleck knew that the business world could be cruel, but he found that following Garner's lead helped him keep his pride. A lot of people wanted to work with him, not because he was powerful, but because they respected him. This truth about Garner's effect also shows why Selleck put his family first, above all else. Forner taught him that success didn't matter if it hurt your personal life. Even when he was at the top of his game, Selleck famously picked family over work all the time. He turned down parts and chances so that the people he loved could have more time with him. People outside of Selleck's family thought those choices were strange, but he saw them as a direct reflection of Garner's ideals. Selleck now knows that the idea of him as a trustworthy man is not totally his own creation. It comes from the quiet standard that Garner set many years ago. He might have gone the way many stars do when they chase fame over character if that person hadn't been there for him. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.